All right, let's talk about a company that didn't just lead the market. For a while, it literally was the market. We're talking about a name that was once completely synonymous with the word phone. This is the absolutely incredible story of Nokia. You know, if you grew up in the late 90s or the early 2000s, this image is pure nostalgia. I mean, chances are you had one of these, or your parents did, or your best friend did. They were basically indestructible, the batteries lasted forever, and of course, they had Snake. Nokia didn't just sell us phones. They really defined an entire era of how we connect with each other.
Okay, just look at this number, 4%. It might not seem huge, but think about what this means. At its absolute peak, this one single company accounted for 4% of its home country's entire GDP. It was responsible for 21% of all of Finland's exports, and get this, 70% of the Helsinki stock market's value. This wasn't just another company, it was a national treasure, a symbol of Finnish pride.
But here's where the story gets really interesting. The part most of us remember, the indestructible phones, that iconic ringtone, that's just one chapter in a much, much longer and honestly more surprising book. To really get the full picture, we've got to go back. Way back.
So, let's start at the very beginning. We're talking before electronics, way before cell phones, at the very foundation of the company we think we know.
That's right. Nokia didn't start in some high-tech lab. It began its life as a paper pulp mill way back in 1865. The founder, Fredrik Idestam, actually named the company after its second mill, which was located near the town of Nokia. So yeah, the name we associate with all that cutting-edge tech, it actually comes from a riverside town and its paper industry.
And this just shows you how wild their beginnings were. Long before the legendary Nokia 3310 was connecting people all over the world, the Nokia company was making toilet paper. It's a pretty crazy contrast, right? From paper products to pocket-sized supercomputers. The company we think of as Nokia was really born in 1967. That's when three separate companies merged: the original Nokia Paper Company, the Finnish Rubber Works, and the Finnish Cable Factory. And this created this giant industrial conglomerate that made, well, everything. We're talking iconic rubber boots, car tires, gas masks for the army, and military communication equipment. It was a real grab bag of industries. And now we get to the moment where everything changed. In the late 80s and early 90s, Finland was in a major recession, and Nokia was this big, sprawling, unfocused company. Its leaders had to make a really tough choice about its future. And boy, did they decide to make a massive bet. And what a bet it was. Under their new CEO, Jorma Ollila, they basically sold off everything else, the rubber, the cables, the TVs, to go all in on one thing: mobile phones and telecom. And this timeline just shows how fast it all happened. They helped make the world's first GSM call in '91, and just 7 years later, they were the #1 mobile phone brand on the entire planet. It was an absolutely explosive, meteoric rise.
So, what was their secret sauce? Well, first, they championed the GSM digital standard, which was just easier to use. But their real genius was in marketing. They figured out that phones weren't just for serious business people in suits. They made them cool, personal, and fun. Remember those Express-on covers? That was a total game changer. It turned a piece of tech into a fashion accessory. And the results? They speak for themselves. Their revenue grew 5 times over in just 5 years. Insane.
So for a decade, Nokia was literally on top of the world. They seemed completely invincible. But as we all know, the tech world moves at lightning speed, and what came next was one of the most stunning and dramatic collapses in corporate history.
This is the million-dollar question, right? The one that business schools have been studying for years. How does a company with that much power, that much market share, and so much talent fall so far, so incredibly fast?
Well, first, let's talk tech. In 2007, the iPhone showed up, and then Android came along. And these weren't just new phones. They were entirely new platforms built around touchscreens and, crucially, apps. Nokia's operating system, Symbian, had been great for its time, but it was now clunky and a nightmare for developers to build on. The game had shifted from hardware to software, and Nokia was caught completely flat-footed.
But the problem wasn't just outside threats. Inside the company, things were apparently a mess. Years of being #1 had led to arrogance and complacency. Different departments were fighting each other, which totally stifled innovation. It became this slow-moving bureaucracy right at the moment it needed to be faster than ever. In fact, it's reported that hundreds of brilliant, forward-thinking ideas from their own engineers were shot down.
So, in a final, dramatic roll of the dice, the new CEO, Stephen Elop, who was a former Microsoft executive, made a huge decision in 2011. He decided to ditch Nokia's own software and bet the entire farm on an exclusive alliance with Microsoft to use its Windows Phone operating system. It was a Hail Mary pass to try and create a third ecosystem to fight Apple and Google.
Well, the gamble didn't pay off. Even though they made some really beautiful phones, the Windows Phone platform just never caught on with people. And by 2014, the heartbreaking decision was made: sell the entire mobile phone business to Microsoft. The company's chairman at the time, Risto Siilasmaa, captured the feeling perfectly with this quote: "It was the logical business move, sure, but for Finland, it felt like selling the family's crown jewels."
And for a lot of us, that's kind of where the Nokia story ends. But it's not. The sale of the phone business wasn't the death of Nokia at all. It was actually the beginning of a radical transformation. So what on earth does Nokia actually do today?
This is the Nokia of today. It's a completely different company with a totally different focus, still headquartered in Espoo, Finland. The consumer-facing phone giant that we all knew is gone, and in its place is a B2B technology powerhouse.
So how did they survive? They went back to their roots in telecommunications infrastructure. Building the actual networks, the cell towers, the antennas that all of our modern phones run on. They doubled down, buying their competitor Alcatel-Lucent and its legendary research center, Bell Labs. And today, they are one of the biggest network equipment makers in the world. And that famous Nokia name? Well, it's back on phones, but it's licensed to a new Finnish company, HMD Global, that now designs and sells them.
And that brings us to one last thought. The story of Nokia is the ultimate cautionary tale in the world of technology. It's proof that no company, no matter how powerful or dominant it seems, is too big to fail if it stops innovating and can't adapt to change. And it really makes you wonder, which of today's tech giants seem invincible to you? And are they learning the lessons from the king who lost his crown?